So you're playing Genshin, you're doing some 10 pulls, while you don't get a 5-star, you do get 4-star Chevreuse. Now, what do you get with Chevreuse besides Emily and Chiori's really good friend? Well, Chevreuse is a polearm wielding pyro user who allows for overloaded reactions to be used in a very good way. It kind of brought overloaded back onto the table. And in this video, we're going to look at the basics of Chevy, how she works, how her kit works. And then in the next video, we're going to look at like specific teams to use her in. So I know that I only show like the current build of the current character here. We're actually going to skip that. We're going to have that in the end. If you do want to see the build on my Chevy, check it out at the end. But now we're going to get straight into how her kit works. Now, one of the key things with Chevy is to get her maximum use with how she buffs and debuffs enemies, how she buffs your team and debuffs enemies, is to activate one of her passives. And in this passive, you can only use a team of characters with Electro and Pyro. So as you can see here, we have Raiden, Sarah, Chevy, and Bennett. This is my Raiden hypercarry team that I use a lot. And this team only has Electro and Pyro elements in it. As you can see, we have these little sparks flying up around Chevy. That is how you know that you have activated this passive, by only having Electro and Pyro characters. Now, what does this passive do? Well, whenever you only have Pyro and Electro characters, whenever an overloader reaction is caused by anybody on the team, it doesn't have to be Chevy, it makes the enemy's resistance to Pyro and Electro decrease by 40% for 6 seconds. You do have to make sure that you have only the Pyro and Electro characters, but again, anybody in the team can cause the overload reaction to make the enemy weak to Pyro and Electro. Now, let's look at Chevy's individual kit. So Chevy's normal attacks are gonna be pretty normal. I do like the animation. One thing is that they're a lot slower than other polearm users, right? Her normal attacks, she is not a very fast normal attack. And I realized just how much slower she was while recording for this video. Her charge attack is going to be the spinning version like this, where she's gonna go through and hit any kind of enemy in her path. Now, her skill. Her skill is gonna have a tap and a hold, and we're just gonna use the tap version for right now. She's gonna pull out her musket, and she is going to fire a shot at your enemy, doing pyro damage as well as the darker alignment from Fontaine. I believe that one's Ouija, it might be Numa. I can't remember. Here's the correct answer. Here's the correct one to that. Now, we're going to use her skill again, but first we're going to cause an overload reaction. That's going to put this little symbol next to Chevy. And this symbol allows us to do an overcharged ball, and that deals with her other passive. After she fires an overcharged ball using her skill, nearby Pyro and Electro characters in the party gain a 1% increase attack for every 1,000 max HP Chevy has, maxing out at 40,000 HP or 40%. So we're going to use her hold, which is going to bring up the sights. She's going to fire off the overcharged ball, and it is going to give our entire party of Electro and Pyro characters an attack increase. Now, in order to get the attack buff, you do have to do an overloaded reaction before you fire Chevy's charge off. So just make sure that you're using her skill whenever you have the symbol next to her to get the attack buff. So if we look at Chevy, she has 1,247 attack. If we then use her skill, get the attack buff, we are going to make her attack 1,498. Also notice that the enemies nearby do have the arrows pointing down on them. That means that they have had the overloader reaction caused to them. That means they are weaker to Pyro and Electro attacks currently. Now her burst. She's going to pull out her musket. She's going to fire another shot. It's going to go in the air. It's going to do an instance of Pyro damage. And then it's going to scatter off more shells around the enemies. And then those are going to go off, dealing another instance of Pyro damage. That's really all that her burst does. Her entire buffing and debuffing mechanism revolves around overloader reactions and her skill. So her burst is just going to be good for damage, as well as, of course, charging up Raiden's ring, which in this team it works out really, really well. Chevy is not only a buffer for your team and a debuffer to enemies, she is also a healer. So we're going to let her take some damage. We're then going to use her skill, which is going to heal based on her max HP. So her buffing is based on her max HP, and her healing is based on her max HP. It is only going to heal your on-field character. It's not going to heal your whole party. So if we let our entire party take a little bit of damage, you're going to notice it is only going to heal the member that is on the field. It is not going to heal anybody sitting on the sidelines, right? So it's not going to heal Chevy when Raiden's on the field. When you get all of this together with something like a Raiden hypercarry team, then this is what you get, right? You get an insane amount of buffing with C6 Sarah, Chevy, and C6 Benny going to Raiden, making her do a lot of damage. It's very, very good for making the enemy weaker to the elements, and then just making Raiden do so much more damage. That is what this entire team is revolved around. That's why it's called a hypercarry team, because all of the buffs go to Raiden. Now, for artifacts, if you're using her mid to early game, then probably just doing 4-piece Exile is going to be good because it's going to give her some energy to allow her to use her burst more, but then it's also going to give energy to your other characters. You still want to try and get HP on her. You want to get as much HP, up to 40k as you can, but it's really hard to build HP because there are no HP artifacts that early in the game. Late game, Noblesse is going to be a very, very good artifact set for Chevy. Now, I do have Noblesse on my Benny, and you can't stack Noblesses. So I am running Noblesse on Benny. I'm not going to put Noblesse on Chevy because it's not going to do anything. I run Songs of Days Past, which is going to give her an extra healing bonus, and then how much you heal also gives a damage bonus to your on-field character. So if you want her to heal more to get the full passive of this, you do need more than 40k HP. I am currently working on it. It still works really well at just getting a little bit extra damage going to your on-field character. Now, if you're having trouble hitting that 40k HP, you can just do like 2-piece Tenacity, 2-piece VG, so that way you can get her HP as high as possible. Now, for main stats, of course, we're going to do HP, HP, and HP, just trying to get a little bit of ER in the substats, that way we can use her burst more often, right? Especially in a Raiden team where Raiden's damage, we need to fill up her gauge by using her other bursts. ER is going to be good. Now, for weapons, I use Dialogues of the Desert Sages. This is an event weapon that came out a while ago, and if you missed this, that's really unfortunate because, in my opinion, this is her best weapon. Yes, Black Tassel gets a little bit more HP, but this also, you can use the passive on this. And the passive on this also allows me to give energy to Benny, so that way I can have his burst up every single rotation, no matter what. And Chevy's burst every rotation, right? Because it's going to give energy to her whenever she heals anybody. And then I can just swap to Benny, let hit catch the incoming energy from her skill, and it works very, very well. This, in my opinion, is her best weapon. Black Tassel is also really, really good because it's going to give up a little bit more HP, but you can't use its passive. However, it is a 3-star, meaning that you should be able to get this weapon easily, be able to get a copy of this weapon. And if you're building her for full support, then this is going to be a very, very good option. You do, of course, have the Fontaine Craftable weapon, Rightful Reward, which gets up HP, not as much, but it's passive whenever you heal Chevy. It has to be the wielder. Then she can also get some energy back. So it's like a not as good Dialogue of the Desert Sages. Now, if you want to build Chevy for a DPS, for like an off-field damage dealer, then you can do something like Crimson, which is going to be really, really good. You can even do like a 2-piece Noblesse, 2-piece Golden Shroop, or you can do like 4-piece Emblems. That way she's going to be doing a lot of damage through her burst. This is going to be much more of I want to do damage with Chevy, not necessarily buff and heal with Chevy. Now, for weapons on that build, you could just do something like Deathmatch, which is going to get up your crit rate. It's also going to increase attack. You could do Dragon's Bane if you want to do like a weird Virgin Chevy. You could do something like Favonius Lance if you really want to use her with Emblem. You could use Ballad of the Fjord. You could do Kitaian Crossspear. You can use a lot of different weapons if you're going to be building a DPS Chevy, a damage dealing Chevy. And now it's time to look at my build on my Chevy. Chevy is a character that I use a lot because my Hyper Raiden team is one that I use a lot. She is level 80 out of 90. I didn't have to take her to 90 to get her to over 40k HP, 1,247 attack, and a 51 EM. Her crit split is 29.5 over 137 with 122.7 ER. And then, like I said, she is running an R5 level 80 Dialogue of the Desert Sages. I do need to get that up so we can get more damage from her artifacts, which are going to be 4-piece Songs of Days Past. She is C1, which just gives a little bit of extra energy to your characters, causing Overloaded. In case you don't know, it took me 251 wishes to get C0 Chevy, so the fact that I have C1 is just great. And then her talent's 166. I do need to get up her skill a little bit higher because her skill is if you level up her skill, then you can get more healing, meaning that you can use Song of Days Past buff a little bit more. So I am planning on crowning her skill, so that way she can give a much higher buff from her healing. Now, in Chevy's next video, since we did talk a lot about artifacts, in this one we're going to talk more about teams. I think I'm going to make the Artifact Grinding Hell video much more of a diversity of teams video, where we're going to go in with several different teams. I have actually used Chevy in a Dia Raiden team. I've used Arlecchino Chevy, which is a really, really fun team. That's probably one of my more favorite teams, was Arlecchino and Chevy. I've used Arlecchino and Dia. There's a lot of different teams that you can use as long as they are Pyro and Electro teams. You can do a lot, and it's a lot of fun using her. So in the next video, that's what we're specifically going to talk about. Is going to be much more on how to use her in a variety of teams. And that is going to be it for this video. If you have any questions, do be sure to leave it down in the comments. Myself or someone else will be sure to answer it, and I'll see you in the next one.